The night was quiet on Lunar Station Artemis. Lieutenant Han Minji sat alone in the deep space communications room. The only light came from her computer screens. She had been working for 12 hours, but she was not tired. She loved her job. She listened to the stars. Most nights, she heard nothing but static. The universe was big and empty, but tonight something was different. A strange pattern appeared on her screen. It repeated again and again. Minji leaned forward in her chair. Her heart began to beat faster. She checked her equipment 3 times. Everything was working correctly. The signal was real. It was coming from far away, from a place humans had never visited. And it was not random noise. It had structure. It had meaning. Someone was talking. Minji worked through the night and the next day. She did not sleep. She drank cup after cup of coffee. Her eyes hurt, but she could not stop. The signal was a puzzle, and she had to solve it. She tried every translation method she knew. Nothing worked at first, but slowly, piece by piece, she began to understand. On the 3rd day, she finally broke through. The words appeared on her screen, and tears began to fall down her face. The message was simple. It was desperate. It was a cry for help. The message came from a species called the Velari. They were peaceful people who loved art and music and learning. They had lived happily on their world for thousands of years. But then the Dominion came. The Dominion was a great empire that conquered everyone they met. They showed no mercy. They killed without reason. The Velari had been running for 300 years. Once there were billions of them. Now, only a few thousand remained. They lived on old ships that were falling apart. They had nowhere to go. No one would help them. Every species they met was too afraid of the Dominion. This message was their last hope. They sent it in every direction, praying that someone, somewhere, would hear them. Someone brave enough to answer. Minji saved everything and ran to find her commander. Within hours, the message reached the United Earth Council in Geneva. The leaders of humanity gathered to discuss what to do. The debate was loud and angry. Some people said they should do nothing. The galaxy was dangerous. If they helped the Velari, they would make an enemy of the Dominion. Why risk everything for strangers? Better to stay hidden and safe. Others disagreed. They said humanity could not ignore a cry for help. What kind of species would they be if they let innocent people die? They had the power to help. They had the ships and the weapons. They had a choice to make. Admiral Kim Dae-ho listened to both sides. He was an old soldier with gray hair and tired eyes. He had seen many wars. He had lost many friends. He knew what fighting cost, but he also knew what it meant to be human. He stood up and walked to the center of the room. Everyone became quiet. They knew he was a man who did not speak often, but when he spoke, people listened. "I have heard all the arguments," he said. "I understand the fear. War is terrible. People will die. But I ask you this, if we do not answer this call, what are we? We have spent our whole history fighting each other. We have done terrible things, but we have also done great things. We have helped the weak. We have stood up for those who could not stand for themselves." He paused and looked around the room. "Someone out there is calling for help. They are scared and alone. They are dying, and we are the only ones who can save them. If we turn away now, we are not the species I thought we were." The room was silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, the council members began to vote. It was close, but in the end, humanity made its choice. They would answer the call. The order went out that same night. Every shipyard on Earth and the colonies began to work faster than ever before. Workers who had finished their shifts stayed to help. Retired engineers came back to work. Students left their schools to join the effort. Everyone wanted to do their part. Captain Park Ji-won received her orders on the bridge of her ship, the UES Resolve. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She had lost her family in a disaster 10 years ago. Since then, she had given her life to the military. The ship was her home. The crew was her family. She read the orders twice. Then she looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were waiting for help. She thought of her parents, her brother, her little sister. She could not save them, but maybe she could save someone else. "All hands," she said into the ship's speaker system. "This is the captain. We have a new mission. We are going to war, not for land, not for money, not for power. We are going to save people who cannot save themselves. I will not lie to you. It will be dangerous. Some of us may not come back, but this is what we were born to do." She took a deep breath. "Prepare for departure. We leave in 48 hours. All across Earth, the same scene played out on 300 ships. The United Earth Armada was going to war. For the first time in history, humans would fight among the stars. They did not know what waited for them. They did not know how hard the battle would be. But they knew one thing for certain. Someone had asked for help, and they were going to answer. The journey took 2 months. 2 months of traveling faster than light, through empty space, toward a place no human had ever been. The crew of the Resolve stayed busy. They trained every day. They checked their weapons. They prepared for anything. When they finally arrived, the sight took their breath away. The Valari refugee fleet floated in a purple nebula called the Shroud. There were hundreds of ships, but they were not warships. They were old transport vessels, cargo haulers, and passenger liners. Many of them had holes in their hulls, covered with emergency patches. Some were held together with nothing but hope. Admiral Kim looked at the sad fleet and felt his heart grow heavy. These people had lost everything: their homes, their planet, their families. All they had left were these broken ships and each other. The Valari saw the human armada appear and panicked at first. 300 warships had just arrived out of nowhere. But then they received a message. It was simple. "We are from Earth. We heard your call. We are here to help." A young Valari named Vela was chosen to make first contact. She was a scout, one of the few in her species brave enough to explore. But as her small shuttle flew toward the massive human ships, she was terrified. She had heard stories about Earth. Everyone in the galaxy had. Earth was a Category 9 death world. That meant it was one of the most dangerous planets in the known universe. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was poison to most species. The weather could kill you in 100 different ways, and the creatures that lived there had evolved to survive all of it. Humans were the worst of all. They were predators. They had forward-facing eyes, like hunters. They could run for hours without stopping. They healed from wounds that would kill anyone else. They ate plants and animals. They even drank a hot black liquid that was basically poison. Vela's hands shook as her shuttle landed in the hangar of the Resolve. The doors opened, and she stepped out into a nightmare. The air was thick and heavy. The gravity pulled at her thin bones. And standing before her was a human woman. Captain Park Ji-won was not tall by human standards, but to Vela she looked like a giant. Her eyes were dark and focused, like a predator watching prey. She moved with a grace that seemed impossible for a creature from such a heavy world. Everything about her screamed danger. Vela wanted to run. She wanted to hide. But she stood her ground because her people needed her to be brave. Then Ji-won did something unexpected. She knelt down. She lowered herself until her eyes were level with Vela's. She smiled softly and spoke in a gentle voice. "Hello," she said. "My name is Ji-won. Do not be afraid. We are not here to hurt you. We are here to help." She held out her hand, palm up, showing she held no weapon. It was a gesture of peace, simple and clear. Vela stared at the hand. It was so different from her own. Strong and thick, with short fingers built for gripping. A hand that could crush her without trying, but it was offered in friendship, not violence. Slowly, carefully, Vela reached out and touched the human's hand. It was warm. Ji-Wan closed her fingers gently around Vela's thin hand and gave a small squeeze. "Welcome aboard," she said. Dr. Lee Sun-hee, the ship's doctor, came forward to examine their guest. She was amazed by what she found. The Valari were incredibly fragile. Their bones were like a bird's, hollow and light. Their skin bruised at the slightest touch. A human sneeze could knock them over. "How did they survive for so long?" Sun-hee asked quietly. The answer was simple. They didn't fight. They ran. They hid. They prayed. Fighting was never an option for them. They were artists and thinkers, not warriors. Over the next few days, Vela guided the human leaders through the refugee fleet. She showed them the crowded sleeping areas where families lived 10 to a room. She showed them the food storage, which was almost empty. She showed them the medical bay, where doctors worked without enough medicine. Admiral Kim walked beside Elder Aelith, the leader of the Valari. She was ancient, hundreds of years old. She moved slowly, and her large eyes were tired and sad. She had seen too much death. "I sent that message expecting nothing," she said. "No one has helped us before. Everyone is too afraid. When your ships appeared, I thought we were dead. I thought you were here to finish what the Dominion started." Kim shook his head. "We are not like them." "Why did you come?" Aelith asked. "You risk everything. The Dominion will destroy you for helping us. Why would you do this for strangers?" The Admiral was quiet for a moment. "Because we know what it is like to suffer. We have done terrible things to each other throughout our history. War after war after war. We learned the hard way what cruelty looks like, and we decided we wanted to be something better." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "We are not here to help you hide. We are here to end your war. The Dominion will not touch you again, I promise you this." Aelith stared at him. For 300 years, she had hoped for salvation. For 300 years, she had been disappointed. But something in this human's eyes told her he was telling the truth. For the first time in centuries, Elder Aelith began to cry. Not tears of sorrow, but tears of hope. Someone had finally answered. Someone was finally willing to fight for them. That night, human ships began transferring food and medicine to the refugee fleet. Human engineers started repairing the damaged vessels. Human doctors treated the sick and wounded. And human soldiers stood guard, watching the stars for any sign of the enemy. The Valari watched these strange, terrifying creatures from Earth move among them with gentleness and care. They began to understand something important. Being dangerous and being cruel were not the same thing. The humans were the most dangerous species they had ever met, but they were also the kindest. Warlord Thrax sat on his throne aboard the Subjugator, the largest warship in the Dominion fleet. He was reading reports about strange ships entering his territory. Unknown vessels, unknown species. His scouts had never seen anything like them. Thrax was not worried. He had conquered over 200 worlds. He had crushed every species that stood against him. Some surrendered quickly, some fought for a while, but all of them fell in the end. The Dominion had never lost a war. "Find out who they are," he ordered, "and destroy them." The first battle happened at a planet called Keth Prime. It was a Dominion supply world, not very important. A patrol of 50 Dominion warships found 10 human vessels there. The Dominion commander smiled. 5-to-1 odds. This would be easy. He opened a communication channel. "Unknown ships, you have entered Dominion space. Surrender now and you will be allowed to live as slaves. Resist and you will die." The response came from Captain Park Ji-Won. She was sitting in her command chair with a cup of coffee in her hand. Her face showed no fear. She smiled at the screen and said one word. "No." The Dominion commander blinked. No one had ever said no before. Every species surrendered or begged for mercy. No one was stupid enough to fight when they were so outnumbered. "Then you will die," he said, and ordered his ships to attack. What happened next would be remembered in Dominion history forever. The human ships did not run. They did not hide. They flew straight at the enemy and started shooting. The Dominion fired back. They hit the human ships again and again, but the humans kept coming. Damage that would have destroyed any other ship only made them fight harder. Their weapons were brutal. They used kinetic cannons that punched holes through armor. They used missiles that exploded like small suns. Sergeant Yoon Tae-woo led the boarding party. He was a huge man, tall and thick with muscle. His power armor made him even bigger. When his team crashed into the side of a Dominion vessel, they cut through the hull like it was paper. The Dominion soldiers inside saw them and froze. They had never faced an enemy that wanted to fight up close. No species was crazy enough to board an enemy ship and fight hand to hand. Yoon's team moved through the ship like a storm. They were faster than the Dominion expected, stronger, more violent. A Dominion warrior fired at one of the human soldiers. The shot hit her in the shoulder. She stumbled, looked at the wound, and then kept fighting. She sealed the wound with a burning tool and went back to killing enemies. The Dominion warrior who shot her stood there with his mouth open. That should have been a killing blow. How was she still alive? How was she still fighting? He did not have time to wonder for long. Yoon found him a moment later. Deep inside the ship, Yoon's team found something that made their blood boil. A holding cell full of Valari prisoners. They were thin and weak, barely alive. The Dominion had been keeping them as slaves, working them until they died. The cell door was thick metal, locked tight. Yoon walked up to it, grabbed the edges with his armored hands, and pulled. The metal screamed. The door ripped off its frame. Yoon threw it aside like it was nothing. The Valari prisoners stared at him with huge, terrified eyes. This monster had just torn apart a door that should have been impossible to break. But then Yoon took off his helmet. His face was kind. His eyes were gentle. "It is okay," he said softly. "You are safe now. We are here to take you home." The battle ended 2 hours later. Out of 50 Dominion ships, only 12 escaped. The rest were destroyed or captured. The 10 human ships were damaged, some badly, but all of them survived. All of them were still fighting at the end. The survivors reported back to Warlord Thrax. Their voices shook as they described what they had seen. The humans breathed air that was poison to most species. They drank a hot black liquid called coffee that would burn through Dominion flesh. They lived in gravity that would crush normal beings. They healed from wounds that should have killed them. And the worst part? They smiled while they fought. They laughed in the middle of battle. They were not afraid of death. They welcomed it like an old friend. Thrax listened to every word. When the reports were finished, he sat alone in his throne room for a long time. He thought about what he had heard. He tried to understand these strange creatures from a planet called Earth. The Dominion had conquered 200 worlds. They had fought hundreds of different species. All of them were afraid. All of them wanted to live. All of them broke eventually. But these humans were different. They did not seem to care if they lived or died. They fought not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to. They came to this war by choice. They crossed the galaxy to fight for a species they had never met. Thrax felt something strange in his chest. It took him a long time to recognize the feeling. He had not felt it since he was young, before he became the most powerful warlord in the galaxy. It was fear. For the first time in his life, Warlord Thrax was afraid. These Deathworlders were not like anything he had ever faced. They were not prey. They were predators. Just like him. Maybe worse than him. He called his generals and ordered them to gather every ship in the Dominion. If the humans wanted a war, he would give them one. He would throw everything he had at them. He would crush them with numbers alone. But deep in his heart, the fear remained. A small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, numbers would not be enough. The war that followed would be remembered for centuries. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. For 6 weeks, the United Earth Armada fought the Dominion across 3 star systems. Battles raged on dozens of worlds. Millions of soldiers clashed in the dark of space. Admiral Kim Dae-ho stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the war unfold on a giant holographic map. Blue dots represented human ships. Red dots were the enemy. Every minute, some dots disappeared. Every minute, people died. He felt the weight of every loss, but he did not let the weight slow him down. He moved his fleets like pieces on a game board. He set traps. He created distractions. He attacked where the enemy was weak and ran when they were strong. Human war was not just about strength. It was about thinking, planning, and being smarter than the enemy. The Dominion did not understand human tactics. They were used to simple wars. Attack with more ships, crush the enemy, move to the next target. But the humans did not fight that way. They appeared from nowhere and vanished like ghosts. They attacked supply lines and communication centers. They made the Dominion afraid to sleep. Lieutenant Han Minji worked without rest in the communications room. She was not just sending military orders anymore. She was sending something else. Messages of hope. The Dominion had conquered many species over the years. These species were forced to work as slaves, serving their masters in fear. But Minji found a way to reach them. She broadcast on frequencies the Dominion did not watch. She spoke in languages the masters did not understand. Her message was simple. Freedom is coming. The humans are fighting for you. Rise up. Fight back. You are not alone anymore. At first, nothing happened. The slaves were too afraid. They had been broken for too long. But then, on a mining world called Vosh, something changed. A group of workers heard Minji's message. They looked at each other. They looked at their chains. And they decided they had nothing left to lose. They attacked their guards with mining tools. They took the guards' weapons. They freed other slaves. By the time the Dominion sent soldiers to stop them, there were thousands of rebels. The soldiers were overwhelmed. The rebellion spread like fire. On world after world, slaves heard Minji's voice and found the courage to fight. The Dominion suddenly had to deal with 2 wars at once, the humans in front of them and their own slaves behind them. Captain Jiwan led the assault on the Valari homeworld, a beautiful planet called Ethon. The Dominion had held it for 300 years. They had turned its cities into military bases. They had burned its forests and poisoned its rivers. But they had kept one thing intact, the great temple, where the Valari stored their history and art. They kept it as a trophy, a reminder of their conquest. The battle for Ethon was the hardest of the war. The Dominion had dug in deep. They knew the planet well after holding it for so long. Every street was a trap. Every building was a fortress. Sergeant Yoon led his Marines through the ruined city. They moved carefully, checking every corner. The Dominion fought hard, but Yoon's team was better. They had trained for this kind of fighting. Street by street, building by building, they pushed the enemy back. It took 3 days to reach the Great Temple. When they finally broke through the last line of defense, Yoon stopped his team and called for Elder Aelith. She had come with the fleet, refusing to stay behind. This was her home. She needed to see it. Aelith walked through the broken streets with tears in her eyes. She remembered this place from before the war, when it was full of life and music. Now it was ruins and silence. But the temple still stood. Somehow, it had survived. Yoon pushed open the heavy doors and stepped aside. "This belongs to you," he said. Aelith walked into the temple. The walls were covered with ancient paintings. The shelves were filled with books and records. Everything was dusty, but it was all there. 300 years of history, art, and memory. Her people's soul, preserved and waiting. She fell to her knees and wept. Yoon stood guard at the door, giving her privacy. He understood. Some moments were too sacred for strangers. News of Ethan's liberation spread across the galaxy. For the first time, people believed the Dominion could be defeated. More species joined the rebellion. More slaves broke their chains. The empire that had seemed unbeatable was cracking. Warlord Thrax watched his empire crumble and felt rage build inside him. He had never lost before. He had never even come close to losing. These humans had ruined everything. They had taken his worlds. They had freed his slaves. They had made him look weak. He could not beat them in a fair fight. He had tried. He had thrown everything at them, and they kept winning. They were too strong, too smart, too stubborn to die. But Thrax was not a fair fighter. He was a warlord. He did whatever it took to win. Deep in the Dominion archives, there was a weapon from ancient times, a planet killer. It was so terrible that even the Dominion had never used it. It could destroy an entire world in seconds, turning everything on it to dust. Thrax gave the order to prepare it. If he could not beat the humans, he would hurt them in a way they would never forget. He would aim the planet killer at the Valari refugee fleet. He would destroy the very people the humans came to save. Let them win the war, he thought. Let them have their victory, but they will carry this pain forever. They will know that all their fighting, all their dying, was for nothing. The weapon began to power up. It would be ready in 12 hours, and then everything would change. The warning came from a spy deep inside Dominion territory. A planet killer was moving toward the Valari refugee fleet. It would arrive in less than 12 hours. When it did, it would destroy every ship, every person, everyone the humans had come to save. Admiral Kim read the report and felt ice in his chest. The main armada was at Kar, the Dominion throne world. They were so close to ending the war. But if they left now to stop the planet killer, Thrax would escape. He would rebuild. The war would continue for years. If they stayed and finished the fight, the Valari would die. Every last one of them. The people they had crossed the galaxy to save would be gone. Captain Ji-won stepped forward. "Send me," she said. "The Resolve can reach the fleet in time. We will stop the weapon." Kim looked at her. They both knew what she was really saying. One ship against a planet killer. It was a mission with almost no chance of survival. "Ji-won," he said quietly, "you may not come back." She smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was peace in it. "I know, but this is why we came, Admiral. This is what we are." Kim wanted to argue. He wanted to find another way, but there was no time. Every second they waited brought the weapon closer to its target. He nodded slowly. "Go, save them, and come back if you can." The Resolve jumped to faster-than-light speed and raced across the stars. Ji-won stood on the bridge, watching the universe blur around her. Dr. Lee Sunhai worked in her lab, looking for any weakness in the planet killer's design. Lieutenant Minji broadcast one final message to the galaxy. "This is the United Earth ship Resolve," she said. "We are on our way to stop a weapon that will destroy innocent lives. We do not know if we will survive, but we want you to know who we are. We are humans. We come from a world called Earth. We are not perfect. We have made many mistakes, but when someone calls for help, we answer. This is who we are. This is who we will always be." The Resolve arrived just as the planet killer was preparing to fire. It was a massive ship, larger than anything the humans had ever built. Its weapon glowed with terrible energy, ready to destroy everything in its path. Ji-won did not hesitate. "All weapons fire!" The Resolve attacked with everything it had. Missiles streaked through space, cannons roared, the planet killer's shields flickered but held. It was too strong. The resolve alone could not destroy it. "Sergeant Yoon," Jiwon called, "prepare your team for boarding." Yoon gathered his Marines. Scout Vela was with them. She had stayed with the human soldiers, learning from them, trying to be brave like them. She was still small and fragile, but something in her had changed. She was not afraid anymore. The boarding shuttle crashed into the planet killer's hull. Yoon's team fought their way inside. The corridors were tight and dark. Dominion soldiers attacked from every direction. The humans pushed forward anyway, step by bloody step. They reached the weapon's core. It was a massive chamber filled with glowing energy. The power readings were off the charts. Dr. Sunhee had sent them instructions. Destroy the core and the weapon would stop. But the core could not be shut down remotely. Someone had to stay behind and trigger the overload manually. Yoon looked at the controls. He looked at his team. He had led these soldiers through dozens of battles. They trusted him with their lives. Now he had to tell them to leave. "Go," he said. "Get to the shuttle. I will do this." The Marines argued. They wanted to stay. They wanted to die with their leader. But Yoon ordered them to leave. He pushed them toward the door. One by one, they went. But Vela did not move. The small Valari stood beside the giant human, her thin hands shaking. "I will do it," she said. Yoon stared at her. "No, you are not a soldier. You are—" "I am Valari," she said. Her voice was stronger than he had ever heard it. "My people have run for 300 years. We have hidden. We have begged others to save us, but you taught me something. Sometimes you have to fight for what matters. Sometimes you have to sacrifice." She looked at the controls. Her hands stopped shaking. "Go, Sergeant. Tell my people that a Valari stood her ground. Tell them we can be brave too." Yoon wanted to stop her. He wanted to push her aside and do it himself, but he saw the look in her eyes. She had made her choice. He nodded, his eyes wet with tears. "I will tell them," he said. "I promise." He ran. The shuttle launched, and behind them, Vela pressed the button. The planet killer exploded in a flash of light that could be seen across the system. The weapon was gone. The Valari fleet was safe. And somewhere in that light, a small Valari who had learned to be brave was at peace. At Kar, the battle ended hours later. Admiral Kim captured Warlord Thrax personally. The great conqueror was dragged before him in chains. His empire was finished. His fleet was destroyed. Everything he had built was gone. "Why?" Thrax demanded. "Why did you come here? What did you want? What did you gain?" Kim looked at him with tired eyes. Someone asked for help. The war was over. The Dominion fell apart. The species they had conquered were freed. The Valari began to rebuild on their homeworld, and humanity took its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Months later, Elder Aelith stood before the new Galactic Council. Representatives from 100 worlds watched as she spoke. Human delegates stood beside her, partners in peace. "The galaxy has learned something," she said. "There is a world called Earth. It is a dangerous place. The creatures who live there are terrifying. They are strong and fast and hard to kill. But they are also kind. They crossed the stars to save people they had never met. They died for strangers." She smiled at the human delegates. "If you are ever in trouble, call them. They will come." Back on the Resolve, Minji received a new transmission. It came from a distant part of the galaxy, from a species that had heard her broadcasts. Their world was dying. They were afraid. They wanted to know if the stories were true. They wanted to know if anyone would help. Minji smiled and opened a channel. "This is the United Earth Armada," she said. "We heard your call. We are on our way.